Hello and welcome to Mycast, and it's our first show of 2023, which is quite exciting. We've been on hiatus for about a year while we did the It's Only a Sequel podcast, so Mycast has been on a break, much like Ross and Rachel from Friends, for about a year. But we're back, and this year I thought we'd do something pretty cool, pretty special. So every month we're going to do a Mycast special interview with one of the 12 directors of our new anthology film, Horoscopes. And today I have with me a very special guest. It's Mr. Alex Churchyard. How are you?
Hey man, yeah, I'm great. Yeah, good.
Good. That was a quite long intro. I didn't expect that to go on for that long, but here we are. So, how are you?
Yeah, man, not bad. Sort of just getting over horror on sea and all that, settling back into the regular rhythm of sitting at my desk and doing bits of editing.
Excellent. Yeah, that's the way to do it. So yeah, as always, I've got a few questions for you about you know, filmmaking and in general, horoscopes, and probably some other stuff. Who knows? So we'll go over those. Yeah, so I guess we'll start with. I mean, obviously, I've introduced you, but uh, who the hell are you?
Well, I'm Alex Churchyard. I guess I'm a director, although technically only had one film actually released, which I co-directed. So I often feel a bit like a imposter syndrome, really. But yeah, writer, director, editor, make the teas and coffee sometimes. That kind of guy on indie horror film.
A man of many talents.
Yeah, yeah.
So, how did you get into filmmaking?
Well, I sort of, I think from quite a young age, I was quite interested in doing film, or maybe telling stories is more accurate, because when I was like a lot younger, I was part of, you know, don't really like acting now. I was part of a lot of drama clubs, and I think I used to try and like always steer what the thing we were doing was. And then I used to do like a really bad. My cousin had a Talk Boy from Home Alone 2.
Yeah.
We used to do like radio shows on that and things. And then eventually I got another toy called a Tyco video cam, which was a video camera that directly went into your VCR, and you got a black and white image, and every time you moved it the wire would move and you'd cut out. And but we used to make little films on that. I used to do it with my brother. So that's kind of, I guess that's like how I decided, oh, I like making films. And sort of like through the years I just got different video, like I say, that like a family member would get a new like high 8 camera or something, and I got their old one, and I used to make films on that. I think a lot of filmmakers probably did this. You know, building my way up to when I sort of got a job and I bought a mini DV camera and went to college and used all their equipment and decided to pursue film at university as well, not really knowing what my kind of gateway into employment would be, but just knowing that that was the only thing I really liked doing. That's kind of a lot of waffle, but that's kind of like why, sort of how I got into it, I guess.
Yeah. So what led to you making the your first feature, which was Ice Cream on the Beach?
Yeah, I mean, part of like, I mean, Ice Cream on the Beach years ago now, and part of that film is the sort of twist of it is that the killer is actually just a zombie that is possessed by a sock, like, and we call them killer socks. It's like this ridiculous idea, but that is actually the first thing I ever made as a film. Me and my brother made killer sock films, which was just a sock on our hands, and it was really because it was basically me and him and like our much younger brother, so we kind of needed like a character that the cameraman could be, so that I could hold the camera and kind of, so that's where that came from. And I think, I in 2012 sort of, or 2011 I left university. 2012 I started working at a company that used to just make hairdressing videos. We used to edit them in house. so I wasn't doing anything creative. So I decided I'd like start to write a feature, and for some reason I was like, oh, I'll do a feature version of Killer Socks, and it was meant to be like kind of like this 90s thing, and it was set in a college rather than a school, but it was like really like you could kind of guess what it was really. um and with that version of it, the kind of the twist comes out in the open, so like in the opening, so it's like a killer stalking a girl, and she gets the upper hand, manages to seemingly kill the killer, just to reveal that it was actually a sock, and she gets it from the sock. And then that script was kind of like bubbling away, but didn't really do anything with it. And Michael Holiday and I, we'd been going to like Paul's events, and we started going to Horror on Sea, and we kind of saw, that people were just going out there and making things, whether they had the money to do so or not. They just sort of used what the resources they had, and their talent to make something, and people were enjoying it. So that kind of made us think, oh well, let's just make a feature. And what we did is we decided we'd take like that idea of Killer Socks, but kind of make it something else, and kind of like make something that sort of suited both of our sensibilities, like a kind of comedy horror, like a slasher, and make it a bit of a mystery about who the killer is in this version, and then just at the end, just be like, it goes completely off the deep end, and let's have that reveal at the end, and it'd be like a punchline kind of thing, which is almost more of a short film thing, like a setup and a punchline, because it's just like an enormous setup for the punchline at the end. But yeah, that's kind of the route to Ice Cream on the Beach.
Excellent. I mean, for people who haven't seen it, you should seek it out. I think it's on. It is on Plex, I think, at the minute.
Right.
I don't know whether it's on the UK version. It's on the US version if you have a VPN. I'm fairly certain it's on the UK version as well. So if people haven't seen it, it is worth checking out. We loved it. But we were at the premiere, because we're fancy. Yeah. So fast forward in time, we'll come back to, because there obviously is some stuff in the middle of that.
Sure.
So fast forward in time, you ended up being one of the directors for Horoscopes. Obviously, I know how that happened, but do you want to tell us about how you kind of got involved in the project?
Yeah, I mean, I think it was, fairly simply, like, yourself and Anna reached out and said, would you want to do one of these segments? And we were like really honored to be asked, really. As I say, like, sort of with a couple of projects really that have come to fruition recently, felt a bit of like a sort of imposter syndrome thing, because comparatively to a lot of other people, we're sort of relatively new. I mean, Ice Cream on the Beach was 2020, but I was, delighted to be asked. And we've been, I guess, making quite a lot around then as well, so it's nice to, I don't know where I was going with that, but it was just like, it was lovely to be asked. And
well, I think we'd chatted briefly at Horror on Sea in 2020, just after Ice Cream, and you said, "Oh, I'd like to get involved in Slash House 3." I think was what we were at the time, and so I think we'd literally had like a list of like 11 people who we wanted,
right.
but we were like, who's going to be the 12th person? And I think it was after that, me and Anna said, what about the Team Ice Cream? And so, but then because if you notice, like, a load of the posters say Horoscopes coming 2021, like, because some people still share the really old poster. But that was because we were like, okay, so this year we'll put this together, and then obviously a pandemic landed, and we were like, okay, like, can we even justify asking people to go and make something right now? Like, so So then it became a little bit like that, and then it was like, because we couldn't make a feature film ourselves, we were like, okay, Horoscopes is like the perfect idea, because it means we can go away for like a day and make our segment, and and so I guess, but yeah, you were kind of like the last piece of the puzzle, I guess, in figuring out, because like I say, we'd spent years, like about 10 years, just like every so often you'd work with another filmmaker in a different capacity and go, all right, like I'll just put their name on my little list of, like, for this project idea that we had for years. Yeah. So it was nice to kind of fill that last little space. And but yeah, like I said, as well, I think you were making Mosaic at the time, so it was like it just felt like they absolutely the perfect fit, I think, as well, because you guys are just basically running around making like short films every weekend.
Yeah, I mean, as you say, like the sort of nature of anthologies, they were kind of perfect if you wanted to do like a feature during lockdown, because like a limited cast, a limited amount of time, and you could like break, so that you're not kind of shooting constantly and kind of putting people at risk. You can kind of like separate it out by having weeks between production things. So by the nature of what an anthology is, that's why we were doing Mosaic, and then as you say, Horoscopes kind of perfect for that, and also you've got completely separate crews making each bit with regards to
and I think that was part of it, because a lot of people said, oh, well, what's the wraparound going to be? But I think early on we'd thought we're going to do something that's more like ABCs of Death, rather than say Tales from the Dark Side, the movie, like where there's a story and it leads into other stories, and we said, right, well, it makes more sense in the current climate for us to do something that's detached but comes together in theme, rather than
I think you don't really need it, do you? Because you know that each person's got a star sign, so it's almost slightly curated already, because you've
absolutely
got that thing where
I've seen the anthology film Holidays.
Is that? I don't think I've seen it, but is Kevin Smith involved in that?
Yes.
Is it? Yeah. So funny story about that film. Before Mosaic, Mike and I's idea for an anthology was to do something based on different like seasons or holidays. And because we were like, oh yeah, we haven't seen that. So we were going to do like, we were going to do Christmas and Halloween, but we were going to do like Pancake Day and different things like that.
Yeah, of course.
And then, and as we developed it, we were like, oh, let's just make sure this hasn't happened. And then we found out about that film. We were like, oh, fuck.
I mean, it's a much higher budget affair than I think, we would have been capable of. But I think, like it's very, very similar, and that's when I thought, this can totally work. Like, this is like an anthology, a way to do an anthology. It's not just like because you worry a little bit that people go, it's just ABCs of Death with Horoscopes, like But I felt like, like Holidays, Tales of Halloween, all feel like they've got like, because they just have like a bookmark in the middle of each one, and I thought, okay, like I can literally, for Holidays, like every page is like a book,
right? Okay.
So it's so I felt like we can get away with this, like so you got your segment for the original Horoscopes was Leo.
Yes.
So what is your segment about?
So it's about well, I think that my original thought about it, because there was like a while ago when you were sort of doing Slasher House 3 stuff, you had a thing about design a character, and I sort of did this thing, Chode the Toad, which I thought was hilarious. But and I think my original thought was, I could kind of force Chode the Toad on them by putting it in this. And I think I spoke to you about it, and you quite rightly brought up, well, what does that have to do with Lions and Leo and stuff? And I was like, so I sort of sorry, I sort of took the kind of idea that I was thinking around that, which would have been to have, you know, Chode the Toad be, or this film to be this older franchise, and then a younger person takes it on and kind of completely beautifies it. So kind of maybe the difference between like looking at something like Near Dark and then looking at Twilight kind of thing. So that sort of idea remained, and I was like, oh, well, just make him a Lion Man kind of thing. That's obvious. And then I started thinking, well, something you could also bake in there is kind of like the Nemean Lion and Hercules, or Hercule, you know, however you want to say it. So we sort of put that in there as well. So this idea that the main character thinks that he's got to kind of take down this guy, and he's kind of, is meant to be a bit like the first labor, but it's a bit like mixed, because he's meant to be like Hercules killing him, but he also kind of wants to be the lion, so it doesn't quite work. But I liked the kind of,
I think it does come together.
Yeah, so I kind of liked having that in there as well. But I just kind of wanted it to be, I mean, I think like my sensibilities tend to be like comedy horror anyway, and I like absurd, so I just wanted it to be really strange, and I probably wanted it to be stranger than it turned out, but like particularly the second half is probably less strange than I intended it to be. But like I liked the idea.
I still think it's very strange.
Yeah, okay.
It's like it's you know, it's very unique in terms of the segments that are around it. You know, it really stands out as something completely different to any of the others. You know, it's fabulous. I mean, as I've told you a great many times,
it was really nice at Horror on Sea, because like Cy Henty, who you know as well, has been in your stuff, but like he came up to me and said, you know, I suppose he didn't watch the credits or whatever, but he just said, oh, I bet yours was Leo. And I was like, yeah, it was. I just worked with him, so I think he knew the sort of thing. So that was nice. It's nice to sort of.
That is nice. Yeah, no, it was, and you know, it was one of those the standout ones, I think, in the film. A lot of people brought it up afterwards as well, which is, you know, a good signifier that, you know, and it's like, I think it's right in the middle of round about the middle of the anthology as well. Yeah. So it's like, it's a nice palate cleanser, I think, if you're watching it with a crowd, because some of them are quite serious, you know, and somber. And I think that one is in a really good place just to kind of bring the mood back up, you know, in the middle of the film. And it's hilarious. And Tony's performance is
it's so good.
Like, I love it. Too good. I absolutely adore it. I think it's fantastic. I think you did an amazing job. So, I mean, I guess talking about making that, you know, this is where I show how cheap I am. So, like, no one was given a budget to make any of their segments. So I guess really everyone was working on like no budget rules when making their segments. So for you personally and your segment, what were the challenges of doing something like this with kind of like, I guess, very limited resources?
Yeah, very limited. Yeah, I mean, it was a big challenge really, and I sometimes, like, you know, you've got that kind of Robert Rodriguez thing of like looking at what resources you have available to you and then writing those in and using them. And I'm terrible at that, so I just don't. And I'm like, oh no. Yeah. What we were able to do a little bit was so some of it's filmed in the studio, some of it isn't. But there were days that I was doing for another film, Video Shop Tales of Terror, where I needed like the studio for half a day. And because of actors, maybe we took it for the weekend and we did like half a day on Video Shop, and then I just did half a day of Leo stuff. And sometimes the actors kind of crossed over with that. So, for example, when we did the intros for Video Shop Tales of Terror with Danny, we were doing Leo stuff that same day, and she was just there like looking at why, you know, we got this guy dressed up as a lion man, like not knowing what the hell this was kind of thing. So we kind of like piggybacked that a little bit. I think the biggest challenge was that the original second half of the film, I wrote it and it was meant to be like set in a mansion. So the idea was that Tony's character kind of left his own house and then went to this guy's house, and I was trying to sort of represent Tony's house as being quite sort of or flat as being quite messy and sort of dilapidated and stuff, and then he goes to this big like rich massive house, and it's sort of the difference between the two. I don't know anyone who lives in a mansion, and it was like impossible. So that was like the biggest challenge, because I sort of rewrote the second half, and I was like, there's like a location that's like a nightclub that was available to me. So I originally wrote it to be that, but we actually ended up in a different location, which was better because it's a really nice little bar that just let us use it for half a day. So that was like the biggest challenge, because it just, in some ways it felt like a big rewrite, because suddenly it was about like these two guys kind of having a confrontation in the house, just the two of them, to like, oh, it's a bar, so we kind of need to have extras in there, and it kind of changed it. Some I think maybe for the better, because it meant that we got to have like the bouncer characters, which you like, I really like. I think it's funny. It's like quite weird. You suddenly cut to these bouncers and they're kind of having this slightly oddly meaningful conversation that you wouldn't expect and stuff. So it was, but that was probably the biggest challenge, because it was like, it seemed like a huge change to me, even though the story doesn't really change particularly. Everything ends.
I can't really imagine it being another way now.
Yeah.
And I think the nightclub really helps sell like the fame of the other character more. Like I think I think it works really well. It's got a very kind of like Inside Number 9 vibe to that kind of last bit as well, which I think really works for it.
I think like when I first put it together, I was like, oh, I much prefer the first half, because I think that was the half that was kind of always in my head, whereas it felt like I'd kind of compromised on the second half. But I think like I've slowly kind of come around to it, and particularly after seeing it at Horror on Sea as well, because one of the other, like Kurt, who plays the younger actor in it, much younger than Tony Marden. Sad to say that there's a little rivalry between them. I said to him like, oh yeah, I really love the first half. I'm not sure about the second half. And he came up to me afterwards and was like, oh, I thought it played really well. And I was like, actually, it did play really well. And I was like far happier with it upon watching it the second, or watching it on the screen.
Yeah, it works out amazingly. Like, you'd never know. I mean, I know you've mentioned before personally that you used to, but I can't imagine it being any other way now. I think it's Okay, so I guess my last question is, what's next for Alex Churchyard?
Well, I mean, we've got Video Shop Tales of Terror, which obviously you're also involved in, and that's going to be going to festivals, but is essentially finished. And I've got Mosaic, which is in the edit, and it's like a huge beast of a film. And this year, hopefully, finish that. To be honest, there's little pickup shots to do. It's essentially done. A lot of sound stuff to do on it, but that will also be next. I'm involved with Video Shop 2. I've shot the wraparound for that, which is already shot, but no segments have been shot as of yet. So that's also there. And of course, Horoscopes Volume 2, which we've got Snake.
Oh yeah, I can't like, I've got a list of who's got what, but it's not, unlike the first one where it's like now burned into my brain. I can't remember who's got what for.
So I've written that and gonna shoot that later this year, and sort of aside from that, there's like half a dozen features that we've sort of been thinking about making, and so I'm gonna sort of you know, I do know what the next one will be, but we won't be shooting that this year. We'll be shooting that next year, and that's, I won't say too, but it's a Christmas horror film. Yeah, and I'm quite excited about that one. It's the newest of the sort of 6 ideas, but actually it's the one that kind of like excites me the most, and sort of, I guess it's like the one that kind of came up with on my own as well, and so it feels like it should be the next. But I need to finish everything else off first. But
Well, I love a good Christmas horror, as anyone will tell you. So, well, thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you.
Yeah, if you want to listen to these early, you can at patreon.com/myco. Otherwise, they're up on anchor.fm/myco. They go up probably a couple of weeks after they go on the Patreon, but you get them earlier there. You can also check out the website. You can have a look at horoscopes and video shop Tales of Terror. There's some pages for there at myco.co.uk, at mycho.co.uk. We also have t-shirts and posters and comics and I don't know, fried chicken and all sorts there. So yeah, check that out. Is there anything you would like to, anyway, where can we see your work, Alex?
Well, you just find us on like Twitter and Instagrams, Ice Cream Beach, at Ice Cream Beach.
Right, cool, excellent. Well, thank you very much for joining us once again, and thank you guys for listening. And until next time, peace out. A big thank you to our Patreon subscribers. You guys make these shows possible, and we couldn't do it without you. Frasier has left the building.